my subject matter is 24-hour humans, and what's really important for me is that I am a 24-hour human. Now, I just want to do a little sort of validation check before I start, and I just want to make sure everybody in this room is human, okay? Anybody not human, anybody present as something else, or, hopefully everybody's got this human thing inside them. Brilliant, okay. The second thing I want to do before I really start talking about what's important here is to say we're all equal. As human beings, we're all equal, and it doesn't matter what our status is, who we are, the position we have, or the sex or gender, or whoever we present as, we are all equal. If anybody doesn't believe that, there's exits on the side. And that's important because when we're talking about being human, I want to tell you a story. So does anybody remember the good old days of 1997? Anybody remember that? Yeah? Anybody remember any notable events from 97? There were some big ones. I'll give you a couple, actually. The first one is that we had a general election that Labour won and Tony Blair come into power. The second one was we lost Lady Diana, sadly, in August. The first showing of the Teletubbies happened, believe it or not. So they came to our screens. Anybody remember the Teletubbies? Yeah, so there's a few people in here that do. And then the other one, which I find really important, was Nokia introduced a game. They introduced Snake. Anybody remember Snake? Yeah, so they introduced Snake to the phone. Now we had a phone that not only could make phone calls and send text messages, but we could play a game on. It was amazing. So that was something really important. But the reason I started in 97 is because my journey as a human, I began sort of a new world, I guess, at that moment. I was 22 years old in 1997. I was single, lived at home with my parents still, so I was paying nothing to live at home, and I was enjoying the wonderful abundance of money that I had to spend on me, drinking and looking after myself and buying clothes. I had no children, I had no responsibilities, I had a huge pile of debt, which is great, because at that age you don't really care, right? And I basically didn't worry about myself. I then got a job that meant I was going to travel for work. And travel for work for me was flying overseas, and that was amazing, because my first trip in 1997 was to Chicago. Yeah, 22 years old, flying on a plane, being paid to go to Chicago. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing. It's like going on holiday, but with work. And that was the start of 20 years of travel. Nearly 7,000 or so days later, okay, so I'll fast forward a few years, light speed through time. 7,000 or so days later, I had a massive mental health crisis, which meant I crashed through the floor. And the reality was almost 20 years of travel had a huge impact on me personally. And actually, when I say impact, I don't just mean my mental well-being. I mean the relationships, the people that I was around, my loved ones, my children, and my family. My friendships suffered too. Because actually I got so drawn into this world of frequent travel for work that I thought I was something that I actually wasn't. And actually when I think of my life then, I wasn't really a human, I was just a worker. And I worked really hard, many hours, I flew many times. In that 7,000 days, I flew over 1,000 times. That's quite excessive, right? And when I was going on holiday, I preferred to drive rather than fly. And that was something that I sort of got used to, as the flying was like stepping on a bus or getting on a train to go into the city. And so things changed. My family was suffering as well because I was suffering. And so in 2016, I made a choice when I hit crisis point to not do that anymore. And what I actually did was I started my own business where I was looking after mental health and well-being for companies and helping them to understand a bit more. And it's really important to sort of recognize that, because what's happened actually over 20 years is we all got really busy. Yeah? So our phones in 97 had 3 functions, but maybe a calculator and a date on there. But now we're in 2019 and we've got so many functions that we have to live through every single day. Our workplaces are no longer just 9 to 5. And when I left that industry in 2016, I had an office that spanned from Singapore to Washington. And my day was this long instead of 9 to 5 long. So I could never switch off. So when everything went wrong in 2016, I took this conscious choice and this conscious decision to make some changes for me that were beneficial. And it's really important because if you ask each other, and you may ask this question frequently to friends or family or colleagues, how are you today? You often get the response, I'm so busy. Yeah, anybody ever said that? I'm sure maybe once or twice in your life you might have said it. But people do use this language of I'm so busy, I'm overwhelmed, I've got too much to do, I've got too many things going on in my world and I don't know what to do and how to succeed. And what we need to do is we need to start to reframe some of this, because busy is the normal now. Yeah, at some point, busy became the thing that we all do. So when we're telling people we're busy, actually, I know people that say to me, Matt, I know you're busy, but I'd love you to just give me some commentary. And actually, I'd rather just say, can you help me? Yeah? Because we've got to find that time, and that's what this is about. And so when we're all so busy and overwhelmed, what do we try and do? Well, we actually try and do more, which is really unproductive. So I'm sure most of you in this room work, most of you who watch this will work, and how many people in this room will admit that they do more than their allotted hours at work? How many people will say, well, actually, I go a little bit further. I take a little bit more time. I take a little bit of time. But actually, guess where that time comes from? It comes from all those things that are really important for you. So if I'm working 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, and I've still got things that I feel that I have to succeed with or achieve, I'll do 2 more hours. Now, guess what? 24 hours in one day, you need to take them from somewhere. And what we tend to find is that people who take those hours from somewhere take them from those things that are really important. Family, friends, activities, doing the things we love, and actually looking after ourselves. And self-care is really important in this world of 24-hour humans. So when I developed this idea around, well, actually, I want people to believe we are humans all day, every day, I genuinely want everybody to invest in that model. And I want people to understand that it's okay when we work a bit harder. When we work a bit harder, we also have to then allow ourselves the chance at some point to take that back. Workplaces don't really enjoy us doing that, by the way. They don't mind you taking work home, but don't bring life to work. Yeah, that's a reality where a lot of companies struggle today. And as we see this sort of transition into mental health and the understanding of mental health in the workplace, which is happening, by the way, we're seeing the evolution of this conversation. Now managers are taking responsibility for understanding mental well-being and trying to support their teams better. And when we do that, we're actually asking the questions, how are you feeling? Yeah, you may have heard that. Not just how are you, but how are you feeling? Because when you ask somebody how they feel, they're more likely to tell you more about themselves, not just about how the workload's going. So we need to change the narrative and the way that we do this. And so that's really important. So this thing about we're always so busy is true, but we're only so busy because we believe in ourselves that we are busy people. And actually, you know what? How many people would ever admit, I'm not busy? If you're at work and your boss says, how are you doing? And you don't, if you start telling them that you're not busy, things might start going a bit wrong, right? They might be looking at you going, well, maybe you're not productive there, because we limit the discussion between the two. So these are things we need to consider. In the future world, we need to look at each other and say, actually, first and foremost, you're a human being. And I don't care what your job is. I don't actually care how well you do your job. What I care about is you, the individual human being that's in front of me. Now, how can we do this? This is the challenge, right? So if you break down your day and you think about juggling plates or splitting time, if you think about your day, everybody's equal because you all have the same amount of time. I cannot give you more time. I cannot give you a magic formula that says, use this potion and you'll get another 20 minutes in your day. What I can say is challenge yourself to reduce the things that don't make you happy and improve and increase those things that do. So whether that's travel, whether that's entertaining, whether that's socializing, whether it's doing a hobby or an activity you love, maximize those pieces because they're really important for you. And so what we want to see change as we go through this sort of transition into this world of understanding us as a human is we want to have visibility of what we do. So think about your day, and I'm just going to challenge you all to think about your day. Think of today even, okay? So this is an interesting one because I was given 6 days notice to come here and do this session. But that doesn't matter. But what did matter was I had to make some really quick choices. And the choices I had to make all related to time, believe it or not. Did I have the time to prepare myself for today's talk? Did I have time to prepare some Greek slides for you to see? Yeah? And did I have time to come here and present and stand with you and sit with you and listen to the wonderful speakers? And I chose yes, because I had to make that time happen. Because that time wasn't in my diary a week ago. Today was a different day a week ago until I got the call to say, come here. So we make these choices, but when we make them consciously, we can do really great things, right? Because given the opportunity to come here and talk and stand on this big red spot was one that I was not going to turn away. And it's really important. So that's an interesting thing that we need to bring to the conversation. The next one I want to bring in is the fact that time is a gift. Okay? We all have this gift of time. And actually, if I give you some of my time, it will make a big impact. I'll tell you a story because I love hearing stories, and I love telling stories, and I love the experiences that I go through, because I train a lot of people in mental health and understanding, and I hear their stories, and it's fascinating because you're all individual and unique and amazing people. And I remember this gift of time thing so consciously, because I'd been to a meeting, and I came out of the meeting and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go and get a coffee. So I went to a generic coffee shop, no names, and I was sat there and I was doing some emails, and as you do, you sort of, sat there just minding your own business, doing some emails, sat there with my coffee, and sat opposite me was an older lady. And the lady was sat there and she was just doing nothing. She was having a coffee or a latte, and she was just sat there watching what was going on around. She had no phone, she had no newspaper, magazine, or anything that was really stimulating her in other ways than just watching things going on around her. And I sat there and I sort of noticed her a few times, and then at one point I went, you know what, I'm going to go and have a chat with her. And so I put my laptop down, put it away. The emails can wait, right? Because emails, we're always going to have emails, doesn't matter. When you answer one, you get two back. So I decided to go and have a chat, and it was this is how it went, okay? And I'll tell you how it went. So I walked over, and the lady sat there having a coffee, and I said, excuse me, would you like to have a chat for 10 minutes? And she looked at me, and she went, well, I am here with my daughter. And that was the first thing that threw me, because her daughter was actually having a meeting there, and she picked her mum up on the way and taken her to the coffee shop and taken her to the cafe to stay with her, to take her out of the house. I said, look, don't worry. I said, I just want to have a chat. And we sat down with this amazing conversation, and she told me all about where she lives. She asked me, do you know anything about Maidenhead? And I said, not really. And she told me all about what had happened and transitions, changes, about 10 minutes. And then the next thing, her daughter walks around and says, excuse me, who are you? Oh. And it puts you on your back foot, right? Because the first thing we think is when somebody's genuinely being kind is that they're trying to do something bad. And it was the way she reacted which was really interesting, because I said, oh, I just saw your mum was sat on her own, so I thought I'd just come and see if you fancied a chat for 10 minutes. And she went, oh, that's really kind of you. And I thought, well, actually, it doesn't take a lot to do that. But the reality is not many people will, because it feels dangerous and it feels worrying, because you're concerned that people are going to look at you and go, why? So actually taking those steps forward and really doing that as a conscious choice is not a bad thing. And I felt really good for it as well, by the way. It was 10 minutes of not having to deal with the emails of work. And it was 10 minutes of me enjoying a conversation with somebody who was 86 years old, sat all on her own. Now, I don't know if you know about loneliness statistics in this country, but it is a concern that we should all have. 9 million people lonely in the UK today. And this is not just old people. This is everybody amongst workplace, in the environment and all the settings that we work in today. So we need to start to think about our human stock of people and how we help support them better. Because things are getting harder. Young people are struggling more today than they ever have, and that's a fact. That is happening right now. We are seeing much higher levels of mental illness amongst younger generations. We're seeing a tsunami of challenges that are sat out there in the ocean, which will come through the generations. And until we start to appreciate and understand each other as humans, it's never going to change. And so we have changed. 1997 was easier. I'm not saying it was easy, I'm just saying it was easier. I feel in 1997 I had a wonderful life of choice, where I could do the things I wanted to. And by the way, I didn't spend my life on social media. And one thing I want to talk about social media briefly is, I surprised myself last week by checking my statistics. Yeah, anybody looked at their screen time and scared themselves? No? I suggest you might want to have a look. Because when I looked at my screen time on social media, I last week had 35 hours on my phone. And I don't think I'm extreme. So 1.5 of my days last week was spent on my mobile phone. And that's not my main tool for work either. And that's incredible, right? And that's not me showing off and saying, wow, look at me, aren't I great because I work on it so much? But actually, that's me just being honest about what people do today. And if you're honest with yourselves and you look at your usage, if I go back to 1997 to my Nokia with Snake on, I've probably got about 2 hours a week of Snake and, 15 texts, because I didn't really have many friends then, I guess, or I couldn't be bothered to text my friends because we tended to go to the pub or somewhere to talk, and a few phone calls. And now I look at the usage of that machine, equipment, technology, and it has changed significantly. And so these are things that we want to be considering. And I think the challenge we've all got is that we do find it too busy. We need to declutter our minds and release that time. Because we know what's good for us, right? I'm not going to ask you, but you do know what's good for you when it's exercise activities, socializing, being with others, being at these events. And this is a wonderful use of your time today, by the way, because it's increasing your understanding of your experiences of listening to others. Because that's the thing we miss. And actually, that gift of time is so important. You're giving me 18 minutes to stand here and talk about this subject. And that's really great. I'm really grateful for that opportunity that you're giving me. And if I times it by the number of people in this room, then that's a significant amount of time that's being invested in me, and I feel great. And you should feel great too, because you're giving me that opportunity. But that's what we need to do. We need to encourage more opportunities to talk. We need to encourage our workplaces to open conversations that are better and more suited to humans and not just to function. We need to understand that as managers, if you're a manager, please take the manager title and put it away and bring in a title that says, I'm a leader of people. And when you're a leader, you've got compassion and empathy. And compassion and empathy are those things that help me when I'm struggling. And they're the ones that tell me you want to listen. They're the ones that say to me, Matt, I really care about how you are. And when things are going wrong, I'm there for you. And so when you're there for me, guess where I am when you're going wrong, when things are happening for you. I'm right next to you and I'm supporting you. So workplaces have a responsibility. So as I need to finish off in the next few seconds, or the next minute or so, I want to leave 3 thoughts for you as human beings, okay? Because I think you're all human. I want to leave 3 things. Firstly, as you individually, please look at your own commitment of time and value your time. Because what's really important to remember is we often talk about a day in our life, but what we have to remember is that we have to live every day. And every day of our life, we should be using it as experience building. We should be doing things that challenge us, whether it's standing on a red dot or doing something that takes us out of our comfort zone. But we should be trying new things, right? Because life gets dull. Life gets boring if we don't. Second thing, employers. If you employ people today, or you're a manager, or you're somebody that's responsible, take an interest in the humans. Take an interest in people for who they are, not the job that they do. Because too many companies today look at you with a job description and say, you're achieving or you're not achieving. You can make that change. You can make that happen. And actually, it's really important that you do. And the third thing is, look at your time as the gift. Because if you look at it as a gift and you give it to somebody, they will value it so much more than material things, than you buying me a possession or a gift. So give me your time. Because if you give me your time, like I've given you 18 minutes of mine and you've given me 18 minutes of yours, we're going to build much greater connections. And this thing about being human beings is honestly true. Yeah, never forget, first and foremost, you are all human, hopefully. And please do follow this, because this is something that we need to do more with. And when we talk about mental health development, evolution, and the future, we have to recognize first and foremost that humans suffer, struggle, and have challenges. So I want to say a huge thank you for allowing me the chance to talk about humans. And be good humans, please. Be kind to each other, and thank you for your time.